Arango Tango Q&A, take one.
Take one.
I never been patient. Feels like I'm waiting forever to say this.
It's Tia here.
And it's Manny Arango.
And maybe like a week ago, we asked everybody on our respective Instagrams to send us questions having to do with our IVF journey, our infertility journey, miscarriage, all of that. And you guys sent in some really good questions. And so today,
we're going to answer those questions.
Before
we even get into those questions, how about you subscribe to our channel? We would love for you to become part of this community, and we'd also love for you to leave us some comments and maybe share this video with a couple who may or may not be going through infertility. Maybe, just maybe, some of our content would be encouraging to them.
Were we led by God to do IVF, or were we just trusting God to do it through IVF?
I feel like I felt led by God to do IVF.
I did not. But
wait, eventually you didn't feel led by God to do IVF?
No, I never did. I would actually say that I was trusting God to do it through IVF.
And I felt led by God to use IVF.
Yeah, so we're on, the answer to that question is yes and yes, depending on who you talk to.
Yeah, so I actually think God just wants us to have children.
Yeah, and
whatever means by which that happens, I don't think that is a concern to God at all.
Right. And I did have like prior confirmation about us even having children years before we were ever married, from people that I trusted who spoke into my life about just the caliber of the children that I would have. And so knowing that, and then knowing, oh, we're gonna struggle to have children, we knew, well, I mean, we gotta figure out what we gotta do in order to have kids.
For sure.
I feel like I'm called to be somebody's mom.
And I definitely feel like I'm called to be somebody's dad.
Any particular scriptures that we read and meditate on during that time or during this time?
One of them is based on this tattoo. It is an arrowhead, a traditional like arrowhead. And Psalms talks about the fact that blessed is the man whose quiver is full of arrows. And the Bible goes on to say that those arrows are children. The whole passage says blessed is a man whose kids are born in their youth. They will not be put to shame by their enemies when they contend in court. It says that children, offspring, are a heritage from the Lord, that offspring are a blessing from the Lord. I remember one time reading in the book of Acts, this is like early on, and I think it's Peter who's preaching, and he says, you heard the message of salvation so that you and your household could be saved. And the people who would hear the message that you preach. So that God saves us, and when God saves us, he sees the people that we're going to reach for Christ, and he sees our children. And that was big for me, that the idea, and then obviously like all of the people in the Bible who struggle with infertility,
for sure.
Right? That is like a theme all the way through scripture. So tons and tons and tons of passages of scripture that I feel like speak to the fact that God cares. Like God cares about this.
Yeah.
Like God has a heart for this. Biblically, I think there's just lots of passages of scripture.
So yes.
For sure. Yes.
I definitely had them as well, but Manny spoke enough for the both of us. So yes. Why did we choose to go outside of the US for fertility?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of touched on it in the video prior to this about our whole experience, but a big reason was word of mouth. My friend Wanda told me that her experience in Barbados was amazing.
Yep.
And so that was huge. And then also because Barbados is a Christian and Black country, and I mean, we're Christians, and American healthcare sometimes doesn't always listen to Black women, listen or believe Black women, and that was scary for me because I was already afraid of IVF, and I didn't need the added complication of whether or not a doctor was going to trust me or believe me if something wasn't feeling normal or whatever. And so I was personally more comfortable going to Barbados.
And higher success rates.
Yes. Huge, higher success rates.
Yeah.
because you're not home, you can go to the beach, you relax for 2 whole weeks, way higher success rates, and we wanted success. Do we have to do the retrieval procedure again, like start from the very beginning, or can we use the last embryo that we talked about that's left in Barbados? Now, we could use the last embryo that is in Barbados, but the thing is, it's frozen. And so when you have one embryo, the chances are a little lower. And then you add on top, it's frozen, it lowers your chances even more. And so they always suggest in Barbados that you have at least 2 frozen embryos if you're gonna just do a straight frozen embryo transfer. So their advice to us was just start over. And that was really discouraging for me, actually, when we had that follow-up conversation once we miscarried. I was super discouraged, like so frustrated that I had to start over, but it is what it is. So we have to start over.
We gotta start over. Now, we don't have to. It's just been advised.
Yeah, and I want the best chances possible.
Of course.
Last thing I want to do is fly back to Barbados, do the frozen embryo transfer, and then take a pregnancy test and it's negative. So I'd rather just start over and get more embryos and freeze extra ones even, because we want to have more than one kid. So we're gonna have to do it again either way. So I'd rather have more embryos frozen so that once I have my first child, the next one I can put 2 frozen embryos in and try for another, or 2, you know? So
So statistically, our chances are better with 2. And even with the fresh transfer, we did 2.
Yeah, we did.
And obviously the first one, or not the first.
Well, someone actually asked about the fresh transfer. I'm pretty sure they asked what happened to the second embryo. Well, it didn't make it.
It didn't make it at all.
So there was a chance that we could have twins, but in the ultrasound, there was not 2 babies. There was only 1. So we knew, okay, well, one of the embryos didn't make it, but one of them did. So that's just what happened. That's the chances. So have we considered adoption? Now, when I originally read this question, I'm not even mad at the person who asked it, because I'm glad they asked it, but when I originally read this question, I was a little frustrated and a little offended, because to me, the question felt like a lack of faith, and adoption is not just what you do if you can't have kids. I feel like people who adopt need to have a heart for adoption, and I don't have a personal conviction for adoption. I don't. And maybe one day I will, but right now I don't. And so, yeah, no, we don't want to adopt. Right now, I mean, if we have biological children and then one day we're like, yo, we want to adopt, then sure. But right now, the fight really feels like a fight for biological children. So that's the fight I'm leaning into.
And to even give more depth to that, number one, that was dope. Like, I've never thought about it that way. That people, like, adoption isn't just plan B because people didn't get pregnant. Adoption should be people's plan A. And when people have adoption as their plan A, those are the people that should adopt. I love that. I've never thought about it that way. For me personally, our biological children will be the first Arangos born into a Christian home. So I was not born into a Christian household, and I was born into dysfunction. A lot of people probably know my story. My dad was a drug addict for a long time, served a really long prison sentence in Cuba. Like, I was just born into a lot of crap. And so I feel like I have defeated so many generational curses that I need some Arangos to inherit, because I don't get to reap the rewards of killing off these generational giants. My kids will. And so I feel like, you know, the reason that God gave me the grace to overcome addiction, to overcome all of the dysfunction that Arangos have been known to represent for centuries, is so that my kids can actually walk into the fruit of that. Because I still have to fight these giants daily, weekly. My kids won't. And so I feel like the fight for biological children matters a lot to me.
So that's the answer. What does support from our family and friends look like in this time? How can we help?
Good God.
How can they help?
Well, one of the overwhelming things that has happened since the last video that we posted is people have actually financially supported us.
They have.
Which, I wouldn't naturally say that makes me feel like loved and cared for. But it did. On the back that side,
Yeah.
now that I've experienced like thousands and thousands of dollars, like legitimate, I was like, oh my God, like people are standing with us. And that meant a lot.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have said that last week before people were generous towards us. When people say that they're praying for me, that means a lot to me.
Yeah.
I know there are people who have put us and our children on like their weekly or daily prayer list.
That means a lot to me. The I'm praying for you sometimes to me can feel like I don't know what else to say, so I'm gonna say that. But when I know for sure that a person has been actively praying, that means so much, because I really do feel like prayers have carried me through my life and they're carrying me through this season. So that really, really matters to me. And also allowing me to talk about it as often as I want, because I don't talk about it honestly as much as I'd like to. I think there's only one friend that I talk to about it every time we're together, and I appreciate that so much because it's still new, and I think I've processed it, like the bulk of it, but I still want to talk about it. I still want to, you know, so that is really important to me.
That means a lot to me too, actually.
How do you feel when praying to God about a particular thing and it seems the answer is not coming? How do you, I mean, honestly, it sucks.
Yeah.
And you start to, and honestly, my mind goes everywhere. So it goes, did I do something?
Yeah.
Is there something I'm not doing that I should be? Like, I go into works-based faith. I really do sometimes. And that's just me being really honest. So it makes me do that. And then also it makes me feel like God doesn't see me. God doesn't hear me. Which I think goes back to the 3 lessons that I shared about infertility. I feel like the motivation behind that sometimes is trying to emotionally manipulate God into doing what I want him to do. So if I say, well, he doesn't see me, he doesn't hear me, then maybe he'll be like, oh, I feel bad. Let me do, you know what I mean?
Let me prove to you that that's not true.
So I'm being honest, like I go through all of that, but also I feel, then I also go to, well, maybe he's building something in me, and maybe I need to be resilient, and maybe I need to fight and not give up and fight until I get to the other side of this.
In order for God's will to happen in the earth, it requires strong-willed people. That you know, Jesus teaches us to pray that God's will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I know God's will was for Adam and Eve to have children. It's the first commandment: be fruitful and multiply. And so I always feel like for God's will to happen, it takes strong-willed people. I think it's rare that God's will is easy.
Yeah.
So God's will requires strong-willed people.
That's a good quote. How do you as a wife let him know it's not his fault? She said her husband also has a low sperm count.
Okay, wow.
And this is an amazing question.
Yeah, for sure.
I think in the beginning, we both were walking on eggshells to try not to offend the other person, so we never talked about it.
Yeah.
And that's also in part why it took us 3 years to actually go full force, because we didn't want to offend the other person. I was telling a mentor that I didn't want to really talk about it because I felt I was scared that I would emasculate Manny or make him feel insecure about it.
Have I ever been offended by anything that you've said or done?
No.
I honestly am just like, it's not my fault. Like it has nothing to do with my masculinity. You know what I mean? My masculinity is not defined by my sperm count, though. And
something that's so important is your language. So whenever you talk about infertility, you say we. You don't say you. Even we say we are battling infertility. We are infertile. I never say, well, Manny's infertile and I'm like fine. Like I'll say it at the hospital because they need to know, but in conversation it's always we. It's never you and me. That's like real. This is a us thing. And that's a marriage lesson, period. Mm-hmm. Do people know half? Is it half of couples that struggle with infertility? It's almost half the time. Yeah. It's just under half the time it's male factor infertility. So please stop assuming That when a
Please.
couple is infertile, that the woman's womb needs to be opened.
Or touched.
Please stop saying that. Please stop doing that.
Hands need to be laid.
But we're gonna get to that later.
Yeah.
Okay. How could the church have responded better that would have helped this journey?
Jesus
and I
Christ.
remember, honestly, I feel like my church responded really well because we've been blessed to have pastors
For sure.
who had to go through like 5 rounds of IVF. And 2 of those rounds were successful.
Miraculously got triplets.
On the very last time that the doctor was gonna let them do it. So I feel like our pastors have been the perfect people for this. So in my opinion, I feel like in that aspect, they're perfect. In terms of church people, I feel like sometimes church people can say things in the name of spirituality that are actually hurtful.
Yeah. Well-meaning.
Well-meaning, for
Well-intentioned.
sure. We've had people say some crazy stuff to us, you guys. Oh my God.
Maybe we should do a whole video on just... No? People have said off-the-wall stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
so-
walk straight up to me at church or walk straight up to you and just said off-the-wall stuff. And, wow.
I think that the church, what could the church do is like in terms of just congregants, because I don't know, our leadership was amazing, again, because they went through IVF, so they understand in a way that is perfect. But in terms of like people who know us when we're being open about it, or congregants who feel like they know us, just listen more than you talk. And if you're praying for the couple, you don't always have to tell them that, because sometimes when you go up and tell them you're praying for them, you just start talking and then it gets into the offensive stuff. So sometimes you can be praying for a couple and it can just be a private thing and you can let them know later or something, but it doesn't have to be this like, hey, I'm praying for you and make sure you like,
Oh, good God.
don't do that.
You gotta wear loose pants, man. It's like people have given me all kinds of advice.
Down to like how we should have intercourse.
Oh, yeah.
Crazy,
I mean,
guys. I know your jaw's on the floor right now. I know it is.
Oh, yeah.
Mine was not on the floor in front of them because I was just like, thank you so much. Wow. And then when they walked away, I ran away. Like, I cannot believe they just said that to me.
I can't believe I just got intercourse advice.
But yeah, I really don't know, man. Just be mindful. Like, if it was you, this is difficult. And the things people say most of the time are offensive. So just be really mindful and like careful.
And if you are someone who has not struggled with infertility,
ask questions.
Yeah.
That's always a good thing. Conversations to understand are really, for me, I appreciate that. But don't come guns blazing like you know what's going on.
Because chances are you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And your statements are going to be assumptions. And assumptions just lead to
Hurt
pain.
feelings.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So anyway, did the hormones make me nauseous? And if so, what did I take? I took everything in the world that's possible to take. I mean, I was taking a lot of pills, a lot of injections, and the injections were like compound injections. So you mix multiple medications together in one injection. So I was taking a lot of medication. Was I nauseous? No. I feel like I barely had any side effects until I stopped the medication. And then my body started, I feel like once I stopped the medication, I started gaining weight. I was nauseous, like actually like throwing up like once a week, getting sick off of stuff. Like it was really weird.
Almost like withdrawal.
Yes, it felt, and that's possible.
Which is what they say, it's like a hormone crash.
Yeah.
When you come off.
Right.
Which we also learned that you should
I wasn't supposed to come right off, but I was angry, so I just stopped. But I wasn't supposed to do that. I was supposed to wean myself off. But no, I didn't have any side effects, and I just think I'm blessed because I know I've watched a lot of stories of women who had a lot of side effects. But for me, I didn't. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching this video.
Yeah, and thank you for sending in questions.
Yeah, they were really good questions. We really appreciate it.
We got a lot of like encouraging feedback even after the last video of people who are doing IVF, who are struggling with infertility.
Who have done it.
For sure.
Miscarried, all of that. So it's been really great.
And just know, like, obviously we're Christians, and I think that the enemy loves silence. He loves to keep people in shame, right? And one of the things that we decided early on, we decided a couple things early on, that we were going to be vocal, like, about our story.
Even when we don't want to.
Yeah. So that hopefully we can bring hope to other people, healing to other people, and that we were going to be, like, happy. Like one of the things that...
You said that. I never said that.
Well, we are going to be happy. And one of the ways that I think we practice happiness is, like, being happy when other people get pregnant, being happy when our friends have kids. Like, I think we're great, like, aunties and, like, an auntie and uncle to, like, our friends that have kids. So, like, I don't know. I just know some of our friends have kind of, like, been on eggshells a little bit when they tell us they're pregnant, and we're always just like, what? Like,
it actually hurts more if you don't tell us,
oh
because
my
it makes
God,
me feel
yeah.
like you, like, pity me, and I don't like that.
And it's like, no, we wouldn't wish this on our worst enemy. Like, we want to know that you're pregnant. Like, that's awesome. So anyway,
thanks so much for watching.
Subscribe to the channel.
We love you guys, and we will see you in the next video.
Arango Tango. Oh.